Welcome to Arche Walkthrough Part 2. In this video, we'll explore how some of Arche's features work and how you can use them in your workflow.
To start generating a bassline, you can simply set a key and scale from the plugin header and use the generator parameters to create basslines. Alternatively, you can import a chord progression from the bottom left panel and let Arche follow the imported chords for generation. When a chord progression is imported, Arche uses it instead of the manually selected key and scale. Let's take a closer look at the parameters in the Settings panel. In the Settings panel, you can set the pitch range for generated basslines using the anchor min and max controls. For example, a range of 36 to 48 corresponds to C1 to C2, although octave numbering may differ depending on your DAW.
Once set, generated pitches will stay within this range. However, some styles may use specific techniques that allow certain notes to go outside the selected range. Cell size is used by the DNA Motif Slicer engine. When you import a bassline, the engine slices it into cells for manipulation. The cell size parameter determines the length of each sliced cell in beats.
Map trigger sets the starting note of the MIDI range used to trigger and play the bassline slots. For example, if it's set to 0 or C-2, that note will trigger the first style slot, and each following MIDI note will trigger the next slot. KS slap and KS pop set the key switch notes for slap and pop articulations in supported styles. These settings affect how Arche generates and triggers these articulations. For more details, refer to the Arche user manual.
Arche lets you mutate both generated and imported basslines. Simply select a style slot or snapshot and click the Mutate button. All unlocked slots will be filled with mutated variations of the selected bassline. Use the mutation amount slider to control the degree of mutation. At 0, there's no change. Increase the amount for subtle or more aggressive variations. When you mutate a bassline, the unlocked slots are renamed to show their mutation source, such as Disco Octaves M1, Disco Octaves M2, and so on. If you click the dice button and generate again, the style names reset to their original names, and each slot is filled with a new bassline based on its specific style. Let's take a closer look at the main bassline generator parameters. Density controls how busy or sparse the generated bassline is by adding or removing notes based on the density value. Complexity can also affect how busy the bassline feels, but it works differently.
In style-specific rhythm mode, most engines use cell-based systems for generation. The complexity amount determines which cells are selected. Lower complexity favors simpler cells, while higher complexity allows the engine to use more complex cells. Voice leading controls how the engine selects different pitches for the bass line. When there's no imported chord progression, lower voice leading values favor the root, fifth, third, and octave of the scale. As you increase voice leading, more scale notes are introduced. At higher values, some chromatic notes can also be added to specific positions in the rhythm grid, creating more melodic and varied bass line. When a chord progression is imported, lower voice leading values favor the notes of the imported chords. As you increase voice leading, it works in the same way as before, gradually introducing more scale notes, and at higher values, some chromatic notes. You can also restrict the generated bassline pitches using custom intervals. Click the toggle to switch between voice leading and the custom intervals field. Here, you can enter intervals such as 0, 4, and 7, which represent the root, major third, and fifth. After generation, Arche will only use the intervals you specify. Voice leading still controls the pitch selection when custom intervals are enabled. For example, with 3 intervals, at voice leading below 0.67, only the first interval can appear. Between 0.67 and 1.34, the first and second intervals can appear. And above 1.34, the third interval is also introduced.
Voice leading unlocks custom intervals based on its maximum value of 2.0, divided by the number of custom intervals you set. For example, with 5 intervals, each interval is introduced every 0.4 of voice leading, following the order you entered them.
The order of the intervals also affects their probability. The first interval has the highest chance of appearing, followed by the second, while the last interval has the lowest chance. For a more detailed explanation of Arche's features and parameters, you can also refer to the Arche User Manual. Let's take a closer look at rhythm mode and phrasing. In style-specific rhythm mode, you can use predefined phrases or create your own custom phrase. For example, you can select or add an ABAB phrase, where A and B each represent one bar. In melodic phrasing mode 1, only the rhythm repeats between the A and B sections, while the pitch can be completely different. In melodic phrasing mode 2, both the rhythm and pitch repeat, creating a more consistent melodic phrase. Here, you can see in the piano roll
that both the rhythm and pitch repeat, A in bars 1 and 3, and B in bars 2 and 4. When you set the phrase to free, each bar can be completely different in both rhythm and pitch. You can also use lowercase letters to create variations of an existing phrase. For example, in an AB-AB phrase, the lowercase a is a slightly mutated variation of the first A bar. Phrasing also works with the other 3 rhythm modes, but slightly differently from style-specific mode. In Euclidean, Turing, and Fibonacci modes, the phrase pattern doesn't control the note positions or rhythm. Instead, it is applied to the pitch behavior of the generated bass line.